This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Just when we thought the price war was starting to level off in China, it looks like BYD is getting ready to slash prices even further. A leaked document on social media shows that the automaker is demanding a 10% price cut from one of its suppliers. BYD already cut prices once this year, and if it cuts them again, it's going to put enormous financial pressure on all automakers selling cars in China. But Tesla seems to be getting out ahead of BYD's move. It cut the price of the Model Y in China by nearly $1,400 and is offering 0% loans for 5 years. The price of a Model Y rear-wheel drive is now down to $33,000 in China compared to $39,000 in the US. And Tesla isn't the only one. Luxeed, a joint venture between Huawei and Chery, just cut the price of the S7, which has Porsche-ish styling, up to $4,000 because the car was a flop when it debuted. Prices now range from just under $32,000 up to $44,000, which sounds like quite a bargain because the S7 has some pretty impressive specs, with 485 horsepower and 531 miles of range. Even so, it's interesting that a car with lots of power, fantastic range, and Porsche-ish styling isn't selling very well. And speaking of Chinese automakers, Jaguar Land Rover must be wondering why it formed a joint venture with Chery. The Chinese automaker is now moving into the UK market with gasoline and plug-in hybrid SUVs that are similar in size and profile to Land Rovers, but at much lower prices and with higher levels of technology. Chery's JQ7 SUV is about the same size as the Land Rover Evoque, but at $37,000, it's more than $18,000 cheaper. And we bet that Land Rover isn't very happy about having to compete against its own joint venture partner. But it's the Japanese automakers who are really losing out to the Chinese, especially in Southeast Asia. In markets like Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore, Japanese automakers are getting clobbered. The Greater ASEAN region accounts for about 3.3 million new vehicles a year, and up until now, the Japanese automakers had 75% market share. But that's changing fast. In Thailand, Japanese automakers had 50% share pre-COVID, but that's down to 35% today. Losing so much production is really going to hurt Japan's manufacturing capability because as it loses scale, costs will only go up.
Developing today's vehicles. Issues can happen in an instant. When's the best time to solve a problem? The minute you know you have one. Meet Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your secure, off-the-shelf solution empowering real-time collaboration for quick resolution. With Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your team can prevent issues before they can escalate. Driver communication data and remote diagnostics to analyze and resolve your problems using OTA, allowing your executives oversight throughout the process. Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your vehicle update solution in production and on the road. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
If you have some basic questions about EV charging speeds, Consumer Reports has put together a pretty detailed list of how many miles of range you can add per minute at a fast charger and how many miles of range per hour at a level 2 charger. It would take a little long to go through everything here, so we'll provide a link. But we do see a few interesting trends. Most newer EVs, except for maybe the Toyota and Subaru twins, are able to add 10 to 15 miles of range per minute at a fast charging station under ideal conditions, while EVs that ride on older platforms add 5 miles or less. However, some of those older platform EVs do a better job at filling up the battery on a slower level 2 charger, keeping pace with those newer EVs. So, if you mostly charge at home, it doesn't matter if you have a Fiat 500e or a Lucid Air. You're going to add about the same amount of range while charging. Volkswagen is extending its Chinese joint venture partnership with SAIC until 2040, and the original team-up in 1984 was actually China's first passenger car JV. By the end of the decade, SAIC Volkswagen plans to introduce 18 new models, some of which will be developed for China on China-specific platforms and will include ICEs, PHEVs, range-extended electrics, and BEVs. One of those will be that new Audi electric that was revealed at the beginning of the month. We've detailed a lot of VW's struggles around software-defined vehicles and self-driving tech, plus its sales slide in China, so a move like this makes sense. It also has similar platform and technology deals with Xpeng and Rivian. And speaking of VW in China, it's exiting a region of the country where it jointly operates a plant and test track that were accused of using forced labor. Both assets will be sold to a state-owned development group. The UK is backing off an EV sales mandate because automakers won't meet the targets. EVs must account for 22% of passenger car sales and 10% of van sales this year, but automakers are below those marks even though they've offered $5 billion in incentives to EV buyers. Now the UK's Business and Trade Secretary says its EV plan isn't working as intended, so the government is planning to offer more support and will consult with automakers on making changes to the plan. The UK says it's still committed to phasing out ICE sales in 2030, but changes could be made to how automakers are fined for missing targets. The business secretary's comments were made just hours after Stellantis announced it's closing a van factory in the UK because of the EV mandate, and last week Ford also announced it will cut 800 jobs in the UK over the next 3 years. Lidar could become as common as airbags. That's according to the CEO of Hesai, the world's largest Lidar company based in China. Next year, it's introducing a next-gen Lidar system that will cost below $200 or half the price of its current model. Thanks to that price, it expects to deliver 1 million Lidars in 2025, and Hesai already accounts for 37% of the global Lidar market. The foam used in car seats is meant to take a lot of abuse, but that also makes it difficult to recycle, so it tends to end up in landfills. However, JLR says it will be the first in the auto industry to introduce seat foam made with recycled content. Early next year, JLR, materials company Dow, and seat maker Adient will try to make a seat foam at scale that uses 20% recycled content for pre-production vehicles. Then the next step will be to increase that percentage as high as possible. The recycled seat foam is actually part of a bigger project between the three companies to cut the equivalent of 44 kilograms of CO2 from the entire seat-making process. Aston Martin is struggling. It cut its guidance back in September because of supply chain issues and weak demand in China. And now the automaker says it expects an EBIT profit between 270 and 280 million pounds this year, which is below analyst expectations and last year's levels. But it's not all bad news. Aston also said it raised 111 million pounds to help fund its electrification efforts. Earlier this year, Aston delayed the launch of its first EV until 2026. Aston says its latest fundraising will give it 500 million pounds in liquidity by the end of the year. And with that, we wrap up this show. And don't forget, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, this is our last day of the week. We'll see you right back here again on Monday, December 2nd.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering boost your game. And by Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility.
Making a life full of memories, one road trip at a time. That's what really matters. Bridgestone Weather Peak tires with a 70,000-mile limited warranty.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.